Hello, how are you? Welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. This time I've got another build for you, focusing all around the reprised exotic Khvostov. An exotic assault rifle that is just a ridiculous amount of fun to use right now. I never got to use this gun before it's been reprised, and all I can think of is, where the hell have you been, man? For me, it's overtaken Quicksilver as the most fun assault rifle in the game, and I loved me some Quicksilver. But before we get stuck into the build, if you enjoyed the video and you're after more Destiny content, consider subscribing. This weekend we just hit 1,000 subs, so if you're one of them, thank you so much, it really does mean a lot. And if you aren't, maybe consider joining them. Right, let's dive into it. So look, this build is not here to redefine the meta, it's not a broken build and plus 5,000 damage. This build is just legit fun. Nice to throw on in ritual playlists, completions of Overthrow, Onslaught, seasonal activities, and a lot more. It's all about getting the absolute most out of Khvostov in both damage, buffs, and fun. Not to mention the fun little quirks that Prismatic provides. I'm going to do what I always do with these builds, in leave a little bit of wiggle room for you to tinker to your own playstyle too. Especially since we've now got the new exotic class item in here, I'm going to walk you through some roles that you may want to try alongside this build, but enough blabbing. Let me show you the build. So here is the build in all its glory. Like I say, this build is all about getting the most out of Khvostov, but also leaving a bit in there to make sure we can deal with the big boys too. So as you can see in our weapon slot, we've obviously got the Khvostov exotic assault rifle. I'm just going to highlight a few key things in here that are going to make this build. First of all, Eyes Up Guardian. Collecting orbs of power strengthens this weapon's next several ricochet shots, providing more damage and more bounces between the targets. That's going to be huge. I'm going to talk a bit more about that. I believe this stacks up to 7. Then we've got Shoot to Loot, which means shooting an orb of power picks it up, and shooting an ammo brick also picks it up and automatically reloads all of our equipped weapons from reserves. Now, in the other slots we've got the Eremite. Another really good option here will be the Royal Executioner. Truth is, I'm using this and Apex Predator for the sole reason that what the Khvostov can't do is big damage. Eremite and Apex Predator with bait and switch and reconstruction, it's just there to deal solely when I have to deal with bosses. For the rest of the time, it's all about Khvostov, and even Khvostov does really well against those smaller bosses, so I won't even worry too much about what's in these other slots. Just have something else in there that can deal big damage to bosses. Now, over to our armor. I'm going to talk you through a little bit about how this build works and what we've got in each slot. So in our helmet, we've got 2 kinetic siphons, rapid kinetic final blows create an orb of power. This is going to be massive. What that's going to allow us to do is we can shoot these orbs of power that we're creating with Khvostov, which is going to increase that effect that I spoke about before up to times 7, allowing both utilizing the Shoot to Loot and Eyes Up Guardian, which is the other perk which improves that ricochet shot. Now I've also got Heavy Ammo Finder in here. Simple really, just more heavy ammo for doing boss damage. I've also got mobility just to get the class ability refresh up. In our arms, again, I've gone for mobility. I've gone for Focusing Strike, which grants class ability when you cause damage with a powered melee attack. I've got Impact Induction, causing damage with powered melee, also reduces our grenade cooldown. This is all going to stack when we talk about what's in the prismatic fragments. And then finally, I've got Font of Focus, collecting an orb of power, which we are getting a ton, grants a bonus to discipline when you have any armor charge. Your armor charge decays over time. We're going to be stacking up to 4 armor charges here, so that's going to be really useful. Onto the chest, I've got mobility again, solar reserves just so that Eremite and Apex Predator have bonus ammo. I then got harmonic resistance, which we had 1 slot left, so why not? And then charged up increases the max number of stacks of armor charge you can carry by 1, meaning we can go up to 4 armor charge stacks. This then ties into what we've got on our legs. Again, a bit of a mobility buff, but 3 kinetic weapon surges. Anytime that we have any armor charge, we're going to be getting kinetic weapon surge times 3. This is going to mean that we can get the most out of Khvostov and do maximum damage with the Khvostov. And again, this is going to come back to what we've got on our cloak, and also the fact that we are constantly creating orbs of power, which means our uptime on armor charges is always going to be high, which means we're always going to be doing maximum damage with our Khvostov. Onto the cloak then. So if you've run dual destiny or not, we're going to talk about a couple of different options you've got in here. I like to be quite flexible and giving you a little bit of wiggle room to deal with these builds and tailor them towards your preference. So I've got Spirit of the Assassin and Spirit of the Characterine. I can't say that, but you know what it is. In woven mail when you use a grenade. For this build in particular, for me, I'd be looking at Spirit of Renewal and this spirit here, which will grant us woven mail when we use our grenade. Other options in here would be in the first column, Spirit of Inmost Light, which is using an ability and powers the other two abilities, granting them improved regeneration. Or Spirit of the Dragon, which means that when you use your class ability, it reloads all weapons, so you're constantly just firing that Khvostov off. As for other things in the second column, what I'll be looking for is probably Spirit of the Worm Husk, which is dodging, gives us a small health and shield bump, or Spirit of the Coyote, which is gains an additional ability charge. Again, if you don't have this, then Renewal Grass will be a great option in the arm slot, or for survivability, Assassin's Cowl will do just as well. As for what we've got on our mods, again, I've gone for Discipline, forget that for grenades, and then 2 time dilations to make sure that we have maximum uptime on those armor charges. So for example, let's say you're playing Onslaught and you have that little bit of downtime. Even with all that downtime, you are always going to have that kinetic weapon surge times 3, because we're going to be having 20 seconds per armor charge, up to 4 armor charges. So we're going to be talking for about a minute and 20 seconds here before you lose anything, and that's without even shooting and getting any orbs of power, so that's really, really good. On to Prismatic then, we're going to be going for Gambler's Dodge so that we're constantly getting our melee ability, because that helps me with the survivability of any powered melee blows will make me invisible. Withering Blade is the one that I find most useful for being able to get those quick kills to then make me invisible and to keep my survival time high. Dust Field Grenade, I just like this out of all available grenades that are available. You can go for this or you can go for Grapple, whichever one suits you the best. That's what I would go for. Aspects wise, I've gone for Threaded Spectre and I've gone for Gunpowder Gamble. The reason for this is that's going to give us 6 fragment slots in this Prismatic build. Threaded Spectre also improves that survivability in that if you're in a bit of trouble, dodge, and then you're also going to have that decoy that can deal damage and seek out enemies. Alongside that, Gunpowder Gamble is going to mean that from this, that uptime is going to be high. When you pair that with Woven Mail, which we're getting from our class exotic item, we're always going to have Woven Mail, whether we're throwing our Dust Field Grenade or we've charged up and we've got Gunpowder Gamble. That's going to mean that our survivability and damage resistance is really, really high. Onto the fragments. I've got Facet of Dawn, which powered melee hits against targets makes you radiant. Again, our dodge gives us a melee charge. We're going to have 2 of these anyway. Plus, when we're transcendent, we'll gain another 2. And we're going to be transcendent a lot because that kinetic ammo, that's going to be charging both our light and darkness bars at the same time. So our transcendence time is going to be very, very high as well. Facet of Hope, when you have an elemental buff, your class ability regenerates more quickly. We're always going to be both Radiant and have Restoration, and we'll come back to those. Radiant because here we can get powered melee hits against targets will make us Radiant. Now, while you have an Arc, Solar or Void buff, which we do, we're always Radiant. We've either got Restoration or we can make ourselves invisible. You'll get bonus Darkness Transcendence energy plus 10 Discipline, which is really helpful towards our build. Facet of Courage. Your Arc, Solar and Void abilities deal increased damage to those affected with Darkness debuffs. Now, this pairs really nicely with Gunpowder Gamble. In terms of when we throw this Withering Blade, we're going to affect them, we're going to slow them. We pop that, it does massive damage and clears adds even more than we're doing so with the Khvostov. Facet of Devotion. Defeating targets afflicted with stasis grants light transcendence. Again, this is going to be helping us defeat him with added stasis debuffs. And then Facet of Purpose. Picking up an Orb of Power, which we are creating a shed load of them, will grant a buff based on what your super is. Our super in this case is the Golden Gun Marksman, meaning we're going to be granted Restoration. So when you pair all these things together, the ability to go invisible, the ability to get Woven Mail, the ability to be Radiant all the time, and the ability to have Restoration, alongside being Transcendent, we're managing so many buffs that survivability is so high, but our damage output from the Khvostov is really high as well. So let's talk about how to get this build in motion and get the absolute most out of it. So in motion, the idea is to straight away get rapid kills with your Khvostov and start creating those orbs of power. We'll be able to create these rapidly by focusing on minor enemies with the Khvostov, taking them out quick. Once we've done so, as soon as we have at least one armor charge, we're going to get that ×3 kinetic surge immediately. And that means it's time to shred. Of course, to deal even more damage, we're going to want to make sure that we're constantly radiant too, so get an initial hit with your powered melee ability to start our radiant effect. We're also going to want to make use of our grenades when there's a lot of enemies around in this particular build to grant us woven mail and up our damage resistance. But if you're doing things correctly, we should have restoration, woven mail and being radiant up all at the same time, making our survivability really high. Now, if you have the exact same exotic class item as me, then you've also got a get out of jail card with that powered melee final blow or finisher, making us invisible to get us out of some tricky situations. For areas full of solar shielded enemies or you want to clear them out rapidly, a stasis shuriken followed by your gunpowder gamble grenade is going to be an absolute godsend here. Try saying that fast. Alongside that, being radiant should help with barrier champions too, and freezing should deal with the unstoppables. There's obviously wiggle room here with energy and power weapons, but bait and switch on anything is quite nice to quickly deal with bosses. This build though, it's about squeezing all the juice out of Khvostov, which at its most basic wants you to be radiant, have Eyes Up Guardian at ×7 by collecting the orbs that we're creating, and Kinetic Surge at ×3. Remember, we can shoot the orbs of power on the ground. Everything else in this build is just about survivability and stacking all manner of buffs to keep you alive. Damage can stay high, and the ability to transcend a lot. So, that's my build. As always, I'm open to any suggestions on how to improve it, or if you're like, ooh, that's a bit of me that, I'll try it. Let me know what you think of it if you do. In the meantime, if you find this video helpful, how about helping me out and dropping a like on the video, because that would be very much appreciated. Like I say, Destiny 2 content, you want it, I've got it. So consider subscribing, I've got more stuff in the works and I'm excited about it. And maybe consider checking out some of the other Destiny stuff on the channel while you're at it. Other than that, have a terrific day, look after yourself, and I'll catch you in the next one.